Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 50 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Coastman. This is the Big 5-0. Now, on this week's show, I'm on my own. Ayaz Sumra has gone MIA. He's disappeared off the face of the earth. Now, a lot of people that listen to this show regularly will know that it's not the first time he's done that. He just disappears, and no one seems to know where he is. And that's basically what's happened again here. So I'm a bit disappointed about that. I'm a bit sad this week because it's a big 50. You know, it's number 50. We've had a lot of guests on, and I really thought we could do something special on this week's show. But there's no Ayaz Sumra, so we got off to a bit of a bad start. And also, I apologise that this week's show was coming out on the Thursday rather than the Wednesday. We like to bring it to you every Wednesday, but unfortunately, due to some complications, it has been delayed for a day. And we've only got one guest on this week's show, but yet again, it's a world champion. So that now marks 10 weeks in a row with at least one world champion on the show. Some weeks we've even had two. So I'm going to get straight down to business. There's a hell of a lot to talk about, as you will know, unless you've been hiding under a rock. And as we go into part one, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the review. Everybody will know that I do this to start the show. The first card we're going to visit is a card over in Russia. It took place last week, of course. I'm going to start with the fight that topped the bill, the only real fight to mention. Former world champion, former IBF world champion Evgeny Gradovich, 21 wins and 2 losses with the one draw going into his fight. He fought Eusebio Osejo. Now, Osejo had 28 wins on his record and 17 losses, along with 3 draws. Now, nobody really knew much about Osejo. We thought that Evgeny Gradovich should get the job done, and pretty convincingly, but there was a bit of a shock. In the second round, Gradovich was knocked down. Okay, so he was put down in the second round. He got up, and everybody was kind of shocked. No one saw that coming. So Usejo done really well there. And as I say, Gradovich was in his hometown of Russia, his home in his backyard, so to speak, and he managed to carve out a split decision win over 10 rounds. So all I'm going to say is, that could have been a little bit controversial, to be honest. I didn't actually watch the fight. It wasn't televised or nothing like that. And there were so many fights on at the same time. It was hard to watch them all. But I think that's a bit controversial there from Evgeny Gradovich. But on paper, he gets another win. So his record's now 22 wins, 2 losses and 1 draw. And that's it for Russia. We're now going to go over to Pennsylvania, USA. Again, this one was on the Friday. Top of the bill, Robert Easter Jr., 17-0 going into this fight against also undefeated Richard Commey, 24-0 with 22 knockouts. We know that Commey can bang. It was for the vacant IBF World Lightweight title. Again, that's a great division domestically over here for the likes of Crolla and Flanagan. We're doing really well down at lightweight. And I tell you what, it was set up to be a good fight, and it really, really was a good fight. Commey showed his power when he knocked down Robert Easter Jr. in round 8, and it ended up being a split decision win for Robert Easter Jr. So now he's 18-0, and he's the new IBF World Lightweight champion. It was a fantastic fight. I think probably it's been uploaded to YouTube by now. If it has, go and check that out. It was a cracking fight, and Richard Commey done really, really well. It was a very, very, very close fight. And I tell you what, I'd like to see a rematch, and I'm sure that Richard Commey would agree with that. But that's the main event. We're now going to go down the undercard, another cracking fight as the chief support. We had him on our show last week, Sergio Mora, former world champion. He was going into this bout with a record of 28 wins, 4 losses and 2 draws. He took on the champion, Daniel Jacobs, 31 wins and 1 loss. Jacobs coming off 11 knockouts in a row, and he extended it to 12. So I feel a bit sad there for Sergio Mora. Really, really, really nice guy on last week's show, and I wished him the best of luck, but it wasn't to be. And Danny Jacobs is in absolutely tremendous form. form at the moment, and everybody's talking about him taking on Golovkin. And I seriously think, in my opinion, that Danny Jacobs gives Golovkin the most trouble at 160, if anything. So don't start jumping down my throat, if anything, I mean. I don't think no one can beat Golovkin at 160, but I think he comes closest. I think that's fair to say. Sergio Mora was down once in the 4th and 5th round, and 3 times, I believe, in round 7. So yeah, it was called a halt, and Danny Jacobs retains his WBA world middleweight title. So Danny Jacobs, again, as I said, he's moving on to bigger and better things, and Sergio Mora, he should really go back to the drawing board and ask himself whether there's much point in carrying on, to be honest. But he come up against a great fighter, but I think that might be the last time we see Sergio Mora at that level. He's fighting in the middleweight division. There's a lot of great fighters. You wouldn't really want to see Mora in there with the likes of Golovkin. I think that would be a very, very tricky task. Also on that bill, Jorge Sebastian Hyland, of course, the guy that knocked out Matthew Macklin a while back. He picked up a TKO on the bill, and he extended his record to 28 wins, 4 losses and 2 draws. His win was over Ankel Hernandez. Hernandez was down twice in the first round and once in the second. Former world champion Kermit Cintron was also on the bill. He picked up his 38th professional win. Of course, he carries the 5 losses and the 2 draws on there. He picked up a win over Manny Woods, and he also won the vacant World Boxing Foundation United States title. I'm not too sure what that's all about, but it's not regarded as one of the big belts. But that was it for that one. And also on that bill, I should mention, nice guy that we've had on the show before, Travis Kaufman. He extended his win record to 31 wins, and of course he's got the one very controversial loss to Chris Arreola. He picked up a TKO in round 2 over Josh Gormley. But that's it for Pennsylvania. That's also it for the Friday. All those bouts took place on Friday. We're now going to go over to Saturday. We're going to talk about one fight that happened over in Finland at the Baltic Hall. Top of the bill, Robert Helenius, 22 wins and 1 loss. He took on former Anthony Joshua victim Konstantin Eric. Now, Konstantin Eric with a record of 23 wins and 17 losses with the 2 draws. He's got a winning record, but he's a bit of a journeyman. Everybody expected Robert Helenius to get him out of there, but I tell you what, not in the fashion he did it. He got him out of there quicker than Anthony Joshua here, and Robert Helenius scored a knockout in the first round. It was only scheduled for 8, and Robert Helenius will be moving on to bigger and better things. Now, a former opponent of Robert Helenius also fought on the same night. It's our very own Derek Chisora. He was fighting over in Sweden, in Stockholm, and he took on a heavyweight called Drazan Janjanin. Now, Janjanin had a record of 13 wins and 7 losses. Derek Chisora with a record of 25 wins and 6 losses. And Derek Chisora picked up a KO in round 2. Janjanin was down with a absolutely devastating body shot. I seen a little clip on Twitter of it, and Janjanin could not come up from that. He got absolutely folded like a cheap deck chair, and Chisora, impressive win there. Again, his opponent very limited. We know that he's used to mixing it at a higher level than that, but a good win for Chisora. I don't understand why he's always in these random European countries fighting, but he's certainly interesting, Derek Chisora. But that's really it for Sweden. We're now going to come back to the huge bill that took place over in the O2 Arena, London, obviously here in the UK. Top of the bill, defending his WBC, IBF and IBO world middleweight titles, Gennady Triple G Golovkin, 35 wins and 0 losses, taking on our very own IBF welterweight champion, going up 2 weight classes, Kell Special K Brook. Now, a lot of people thought that this was a mismatch. A lot of people thought that Kell Brook was going to get absolutely blown out of there, wouldn't even come close to winning a round. He was going to get knocked out within 2 or 3 rounds. A lot of people were saying this, and I've got to say, I personally thought that Gennady Golovkin was going to win, just like a lot of others. But I will say this, Kell Brook proved a lot of people wrong. Kell Brook was absolutely brilliant. He was tremendous. He actually backed up Gennady Golovkin in parts of the fight. I actually had it 2 rounds apiece after 4 rounds, going into that 5th round, where, of course, the fight was stopped. We're going to get onto the stoppage in a moment. Golovkin is like a Eastern European beast. You know, he's the beast from the East. He comes forward. He does not stop throwing punches. He does not stop coming forward. He walks everyone down. And I tell you what, he's just been absolutely brilliant for his whole career, really. He had an extremely decorated amateur career where he had like 350 odd bouts, and now he's here in the pro career. Hasn't put a foot wrong, really. He's knocked 22 or 23 people out in a row now. Everybody knows about Golovkin. I don't really have to say too much about him. It speaks for itself. But Kell Brook, of course, was going into this fight with a record of 36-0. Somebody's O had to go. As I say, Kell Brook was brilliant. He was really putting his shots together fantastically. Kell Brook was landing the uppercut a worrying amount of times, to be honest, on Gennady Golovkin. I don't think Kell Brook's power was, as telling as it has been at welterweight. I think that he moved up and it kind of cushioned his power a little bit. Gennady Golovkin's used to being hit by a fully fledged big punch in middleweights. We saw Gennady Golovkin put on a real good performance against another real hard-hitting knockout merchant up at middleweight in David Lemieux. He didn't really let Lemieux land anything on him. Kell Brook, I'm not saying he let him land on him, but I don't think he was going to be worried about Kell Brook's power. But I will say, I think Kell Brook did, I'm not going to say hurt him, but he definitely gave him something to think about. He stunned him a couple of times. It didn't stop him from coming forward, of course. He still carried on coming forward and walking him down and cutting off the ring. Kell Brook was on the ropes a lot, but I've got to say I was so impressed. I really just didn't see this happening. I really didn't see it happening. A lot of people didn't either. And I think Kell Brook, if anything, he's actually gained something here from this loss. It was always an uphill task here. And I think he's gained a lot of fans. A lot of people went there supporting Kell Brook. All of a sudden, we kind of saw it on Fight Week. There was so much interest. A lot of guys flying over from the States, journalists over there coming over here to watch this fight. It really captured the imagination worldwide. And I think that he's done tremendous, Kell. And of course, in that 5th round, the fight was stopped after Dominic Ingle, that's the trainer of Kell Brook, he threw in the towel. A lot of people were booing because they didn't like the fact that it happened. And to be honest, even me at the time, I wasn't too sure what was going on. But after everything, Kell Brook went to the hospital, they checked him out, and he had a broken eye socket. So in the aftermath, in hindsight, I should say, it was the right decision to make. But I'm not sure if Dominic Ingle knew that at the time. I'm not too sure. But, Kell did, and he said it in his post-fight interview. He thinks that he busted his eye, and he was right. So, we don't want to see fighters in there long enough where they end up losing their vision. That's not right. But he put in a great account of himself. I don't know if he'll ever get the rematch, but he done tremendous. He really did. And a lot of people saying he exposed Golovkin. I'm not sure if I'd go as far as saying that, but I think a lot of people would have taken confidence out of that fight. A lot of people that were linked with Golovkin will now fancy it that bit more after seeing that fight, I do have to say. Now, that was it for the main event. We're now going to go down the undercard. I'm going to try and skim through this as quick as I can. Lee Haskins defending his IBF World Bantamweight title successfully against Stuart Hall. It was a 12-rounder. There was a lot of knockouts on this bill, but this one was a 12-round unanimous decision victory in favour of Lee Haskins. He done really well. Some of the Sky pundits gave it to Stuart Hall. I couldn't actually see that, and Lee Haskins got the job done. So it's 2 wins over Stuart Hall now, and I don't think we're going to see a third. I don't think there's any need to, but I know Stuart Hall certainly wants that. So Golovkin, of course, retaining his 3 belts. Lee Haskins retaining his belt. And also on this bill, Martin J. Ward, he picked up a win, an 8-round TKO over Andy Townend. So Martin J. Ward now 15-0 with the 2 draws. And he also picked up the vacant British super featherweight title in that bout. Also on the bill, Callum Smith, he was on our show last week as well. He took on Norbert Nemisapati, also known as Noble Norbert. He took him on, and he actually ended up retiring Norbert Nemisapati in the 6th round. He didn't want to come out for the 7th. He was down from a left to the body also in that fight. And Callum Smith now moves to 21-0 with 16 knockouts, a bunch of those in the first round. So great stuff there for Callum Smith. He didn't look overly impressive. I think he'd be the first one to admit it. But he's got a lot on his mind. You know, his brother was fighting on the bill. His other brother's fighting this weekend. We're going to be talking all about it in the preview part of the show, or I'm going to be talking all about it because I'm on my own, as I said. And, you know, I'm not trying to find excuses for him. We all know he's a class fighter. But when he fights these journeymen, I'm not saying this guy was a journeyman. He had a good record, 21 wins, 3 losses going into the fight. But I think that when he fights these guys that no one's really heard of, they're not really possessing a true threat to him. I think he underperforms a little bit, but he always gets the job done. He even gets the knockout, but he just didn't look overly impressive in the first few rounds. But yeah, we're going to stop talking about that one. We're now going to go over to his brother, Paul Smith. Now, Paul Smith was also on this bill. He extended his winning record to 38 wins with, of course, the 6 losses. He picked up a TKO in round 5. His opponent was down once in the 3rd round, twice in the 4th round, and once in the 5th round. He was up and down like a jack in the box, to be honest. And Daniel Reggie now 28 wins and 14 losses. Paul Smith got the job done, but again, you know, he was way too good for his opponent. It was a bit of a mismatch. And as I say, another knockout on this bill. On the whole card, I believe that there was only 2 or 3 bouts that went to points. The rest of them were all knockouts. There was a good bunch of fights on the bill, but that's it for the Paul Smith fight. We're now going to talk about the Charlie Edwards fight. Good friend of mine, Charlie. He took on the champion, the IBF World Flyweight Champion, John Real Casimiro. He's a 2-weight world champion, and Charlie Edwards stepped in there. He'd only had 8 fights under his belt. It was his 9th professional contest. It was a big ask. It really, really was, but he really believed he could do it, and I know he was supremely confident, having spoken to him on fight week and stuff like that. He really thought he was going to win this fight, and, you know, I had my heart pumping for the whole fight, to be honest. He really couldn't get going, Charlie. The other man was very, very classy. You know, he was fast, he was powerful as well, John Real Casimiro. They brand him as the best world champion no one's ever heard of. You know, no one really sort of knows who he is. No one really pays too much attention to the lower weights, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. And he really showed his class on a real big stage here. So I think a lot of people will be trying to avoid him. They'll want his title, but I think they won't really fancy getting in the ring with him. He's really proved himself as a good fighter, even though he's beaten a man in Charlie Edwards who hasn't really proved himself in the professional rankings yet. But he'll bounce back and he'll be a world champion for sure. I can definitely say that with full confidence. Charlie Edwards is true class, and he got TKO'd in round 10, and it was a real good shot. You know, he got dropped with it. He got back up, and he took a few more punches, and the referee jumped in, to be honest. But I think he done really well to get up from the big punch that landed. It was just set up tremendously. Again, real classy performance from Casimiro, and Charlie Edwards will be back for sure. But we're going to stop talking about that one. We're now going to go on to the Gavin McDonnell fight. This fight didn't actually get televised. It was an 8-round points win in favour of Gavin McDonnell. So he's now 16-0 with the 2 draws. Also on the bill, Kid Galahad. He moved to 20-0 with a TKO in round 4 over Emiliano Salvini. I think Salvini had only been stopped twice legitimately in the last 12 years. So a good win there for Kid Galahad to get the stoppage. That again wasn't televised. Now the fight that kicked off the card was Conor Benn. He fought Joe Ducker, and Conor Benn absolutely bashed him up, to be honest. He KO'd him in round 2. Ducker was down twice in the first round, once in the second round. He didn't have a win on his record, and he left without a win on his record. Conor Benn now 4-0 and a good demolition job. Also on the bill, Craig Spider Richards. He moved to 5-0 with a points win over Dalton Miller over 4 rounds. Craig Richards, a good fighter. I think he's going to be going on to big things in the future. But that's really it for the London card. We're now going to go over to another big one over in the Forum, Inglewood, California, USA. Top of the bill, Carlos Cuadras, 35-0, the WBC World Super Flyweight Champion. And he was defending his title against Roman Gonzales. If Roman Gonzales was to win this fight, he would would become a 4-weight world champion. Roman Gonzales, 45-0, of course. Somebody's O had to go. Combined records of 80-0. Absolutely incredible. That on top of the Brook and Golovkin being 35-0 and 36-0. There were so many wins, or so many unbeaten fighters with their records at stake on Saturday night. It was a fantastic fight between the two. Roman Gonzales, a lot of people consider him in their top 3 pound for pound in world boxing. A lot of knockouts on his record as well. I believe 38 out of the 45 going into this fight, if I'm not mistaken. To be honest, I think it wasn't really his weight. I don't think he looked overly comfortable. I think that Carlos Cuadras was the clearly naturally bigger guy in there. Gonzales was cut also in round 6, and that was over and under his right eye. So his right eye was a bit of a mess. I'm not sure which cut come first, but one of the cuts was over the eye, one of the cuts was under the eye. Also, Cuadras was cut on one of his eyes with an accidental headbutt. I believe that was in round 8 or round 9. So it was a bit bloody, but Roman Gonzales got the job done here, so he becomes a 4-weight world champion. Carlos Cuadras, no disgrace in himself whatsoever. It was a 12-round unanimous decision victory for Roman Gonzales, but I think there was only maybe one round or one or two rounds in the whole fight. You know, if one round would have gone back to Cuadras, it would have ended up being a majority draw, if I'm not mistaken. So it was very, very close and a good fight to watch. I think that overall Gonzales is a much better fighter than Carlos Cuadras, but he just wasn't at the right weight. And I don't think we're going to see Roman Gonzales go up further than super flyweight to try and become a 5-weight world champion at this stage anyway. I definitely think he needs to grow into the weight before he thinks about that. But also on that bill, Yoshihiro Kamagai, former opponent of Robert the Ghost Guerrero, he got in there against Jesus Soto Karass. Now, Soto Karass, 28 wins, 10 losses and 4 draws. He's a good fighter and he's a tough fighter. He likes to fight up close. Everybody knows that. And Kamagai, you know, he was in a war with Robert Guerrero. So it was always going to be a good fight. And it ended up being a good fight, to be honest. Soto Karass actually was down in round 8. He was knocked down and he actually retired on his store at the end of round 8 and he didn't come out for round 9. So a good win there for Kamagai, but another action-filled fight. If you haven't seen it, you've got to go back and check it. But that's really it for that fight in the USA. We're now going to go over to another part of the USA where soon-to-be opponent of Hughie Fury topped the bill here. Andy Ruiz Jr., 28-0. He put his unbeaten record on the line against Franklin Lawrence. He also actually put his NABF heavyweight title on the line against Franklin Lawrence. Franklin Lawrence, 22 wins, 2 losses and 2 draws. It was a unanimous decision win after 10 rounds in favour of Andy Ruiz Jr. I was a bit frightened that might jeopardise the fight happening with Hughie Fury here if he was to pick up a cut or if he was to get beat or anything like that, but he come through unscathed. So a good win there for Andy Ruiz Jr. And also on that bill, Raimundo Beltran, 30 wins and 7 losses with the 1 draw going into this fight. He fought Miguel Angel Mendoza and he picked up a TKO in round 5. So a good win there for Raimundo Beltran. Now I tried to get through the reviewing as quick as I could because there was so much to talk about. I hope I did a good job. I hope that people are still actually listening. Maybe you've all logged out, I don't know, but I hope that you're still here. That's really it for the reviewing. So I'm now going to talk about a little segment that we haven't really talked about for a few weeks. There hasn't really been enough funny names, so it wasn't something we could do every week. But I've spotted that this week particularly, there was a lot of funny names. Now, last week, a guy fought, we've mentioned him before, he's been one of the winners on our show, Hurricane Future. He moved to 22 wins and 6 losses. He's got the 1 draw. It was a KO win over Luis Aragayan, so that's a good win for him. Now, this week, there are 2 guys fighting. I'm not going to go in huge detail. One of them, I'm sure we mentioned him before. I'm not overly sure, but I think I mentioned him before. His name's Aram Amirkhanyan. Okay, so his surname is Amir Amir Khan Khan Yan, Y-A-N, Aram Amirkhanyan. He's actually 5-0. He's looking to move to 6-0 this weekend. Now, we don't actually do the funny name segment every week anymore, but if I do find some belters, I will mention it on the show. And this is one absolute belter that I did come across. A guy called Schoolboy Dilwacko. Now, he would win. If there was a prize that I could give him, he'd win it. he'd win it hands down. There's no more discussions to talk about. He would win it. Schoolboy Dil Wacko, he's making his debut. He's a featherweight, and he's making his debut over 4 rounds against a guy whose name I wouldn't even dare to attempt at pronouncing. So all the best to Schoolboy Dil Wacko. But I just thought I'd throw that in there. We don't talk about it all the time, but that really is a belter of a name. But that's it for the reviewing. That's it for the funny name segment. There's no news on this week's show. I regret to inform everybody. That's because Aya Summer has gone missing. Now, the last thing that I've got to do before we end part 1, of course, is to welcome on the very first interview. Now, we did this interview about 2 days ago. Just before I bring it in, I just wanted to let everybody know that the man who I interviewed was actually in a gym. So it's a bit loud during some parts of the interview. You can still hear everything, but I just want to apologize in advance for some of the poor audio quality. I couldn't actually do anything about it. Some of it's absolutely fine. It's brilliant audio, but some of it was a little bit loud throughout parts of it. So it starts off really good, then it gets a bit loud, then it gets a bit better towards the end. So I just want to apologize in advance for that. So without further ado, now it's time for our first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former 2-weight world champion and one of the pound-for-pound hardest punchers ever to lace them up. It's, of course, Mr. Julian Jackson. Julian, welcome to the show.
Oh, man, thank you for having me.
Nice. My pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and it's, again, I'm so glad because, I just came back from a tournament in St. Croix with my amateurs, and it's just amazing that, you would call me at this time, and just coming from a boxing event, and boxing is now something that has really, affected me now. I'm a coach, actually leaving the professional ranks and now going into the coach in training and teaching and passing on that baton, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. But we'll talk a bit about what you're up to these days. But I want to start a few years back, not too long back. You're not that old yet. I want to ask you just a typical opening question, Julian. How did you get into boxing?
How did I get into boxing? Friends, a gentleman, a young man now. A young man. At that time, we were friends in school. His name is Irvin Beezer. He got me into boxing, and it's amazing. I continued, and he stopped. Because when I got in there, my trainer, William George, the first man that ever laid eyes on me, he pointed his finger at me, and he said, "Hey, you." I looked behind of me and see if there was somebody else he was talking to, because it couldn't be me. I was so, I had a very low self-esteem about myself. And he said, "Yeah, you." I said, "Me?" He said, "Yeah, I'm going to make you a champion. I'm going to make you a champion." And I tell you what, I didn't believe him, but I was able to join the gym, and the rest is history.
He was certainly right, but we will get onto that. Now, Julian, you had a whole heap of fights. I'm going to jump right in with your first world title shot. At this point, your record was 29-0 with 27 knockouts. One of those 27 knockouts over the former light middleweight world champion Eddie Garzo. You step in the ring on the 23rd of August 1986 against the also undefeated Mike McCallum for his WBA light middleweight world title. McCallum had a record of 26-0 with 23 coming by knockout. Going in on the stats here, this fight was due to be a slugfest. You came out swinging from the first bell. You hurt him a couple of times within that first round. In the second round, again, the action's very fast-paced in that round. Then McCallum puts together a succession of unanswered punches and the referee waves it off. This was your first career loss. Firstly, I'd like to ask you what you remember from that night, and did you agree with the referee's decision to stop the fight?
I'll be honest with you. If Mike Tyson was in the other corner, I felt that I was going to knock him out, and I had look, I was so hyped for that fight. I was so, pet for that fight. I didn't care who was in that ring. And I went in there and, not really thinking like I should have. And as I remember Mike McCallum took a knee. He literally took a knee. I had him. I thought I was going to knock him out. I went in there with too much confidence. After he took the knee, my corner said, get him, and I went straight at him, and I got a thumb in my eye. Believe it or not, I got a few low blows, and and the fight was stopped after the referee decided that I wasn't responding. The fight was stopped, and I was really upset. I felt that I could have continued. I felt that, I was up against the rope, and my hands were up, but he was punching around my defense, but I felt that I could have continued. And, the referee stopped the fight. But again, it was his discretion, and we just had to deal with it. Having the Virgin Islands behind me 100%, I felt that I let them down. I felt that I had really let down the Virgin Islands. And I didn't want to get back home, man. After that fight, it was really a low blow for me. After being stopped and, with the fight ending like that, I really didn't want that to happen. And it was a shock to me. It was a surprise. But again, I had to learn from that mistake. And that was the turning point of really my career. Believe it or not, that fight with Mike McCallum was the turning point of my life and of my career.
Getting back onto the journey, you dropped down a level after that fight, of course. You faced two fighters, Khalif Shabazz and Milton Leakes. You win both of those fights by knockout. Now we're in November of 1987. By this time, Mike McCallum has vacated the title because he's moved up to middleweight. You fight for the vacant WBA light middleweight world title against Inshul Beck.
Yes, in Las Vegas, yes.
Yeah, now Beck had a record of 41-1 going into this fight with 36 knockouts. Again, another fight expected to be a war. Now, this time you weren't going to be denied at all. You was not going to be denied. You could see it in your face. You was there to win that fight 100%. The first round you boxed well, mainly off the back foot, and you drop him with a great left hook. Yes,
I will never forget that fight. I remember it was an amazing, display of power, of boxing. Like you said, I was determined that this one was not going to leave. I was not going to lose this fight. And it was told to me that this kid Inshul Beck was the hardest puncher in Korea. He was the toughest fighter out of Korea and the biggest guy. And believe me, he was taller than me. He was bigger than me. But I tell you what, I went into that fight after losing to Mike McCallum and coming back, having two fights, to build me up, and I was back into the form. But you know what? Something different was going on with Julian Jackson. I became a Christian, believe it or not, in that particular fight, fighting for the WBA Junior Middleweight Championship of the world. I became a Christian, and I made a commitment to God, and I said, God, I'm going to give you my life if you give me the opportunity to become a world champion, to capture the world. I'm going to lift your name up. I'm going to exalt you, and I'm going to edify your name. And you know what? Don King said to me, this is going to be one of the toughest fights because this kid can bang. And I told Don King, okay, that this is going to be my easiest fight. And they did not believe me. Why? Because of what I went through, okay, in my sparring session, in my training session. Before that fight, in my training session, I was literally knocked down in the gym by a gentleman by the name of a young man by the name of Israel Cole. He was 160, about 65 pounds. And I was sparring with this guy, and he caught me a right hand, bang, and I end up in the bathroom. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know what was. I saw my wife in the bathroom after getting knocked down, and this was about maybe 2 weeks before the Inshul Beck fight. And I said, God, I give you my life, and I need you to give me back my strength, my speed, my timing, my power. And believe me, God answered my prayer, and it was. I think that it was news that Julian Jackson doesn't look good. Julian Jackson will not be able to capture a championship again because he was knocked out. And I tell you what, God revived me because I believed God and I trusted him. And the next thing you know, this fight with Inchubek was the easiest fight I ever had.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
He looked it. He looked it from the outset, to be honest. Again, as I say, the first round was a great round for you. You came out, you won the second round. In the third round, you land some really big shots, mainly from the overhand right. But yet again, you drop him with a left hand. He gets up, he takes a few more punches, and the referee jumps in to save him. At this point, you're the new WBA light middleweight champion of the world. Julian, how are you feeling at this point? Not only to win a world title, but also in style. The man's only loss was on points before you stopped him. And of course, he went on to be a world champion and only lost one more time before retiring.
I tell you what, Mills Lane was referee in that fight, and I remember when I threw that left hook to his body, I caught him a body punch, and I heard Mills Lane said, "Good punch." I mean, that's the first time I've ever heard a referee, okay, in a fight actually made a comment like that after I delivered a punch. And when I caught him the left hook to the body and I caught him the right hand, he went down and was through the ropes. And I remember Mills Lane, instead of counting it, he raised his hand. I ran right into the middle of the ring. I dropped on my knees. I lifted my hands up and I said, "God, thank you for the world title. Thank you for the world championship." Man, it was the best. I'll tell you what, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Okay, and that's why I realized that if you don't respect the sport of boxing, boxing will not respect you. And that's something I've learned, okay, through my, years of fighting, that I had to discipline myself. I had to come to a place where I realized that this sport is not an easy sport, and I have to treat this sport right. I have to really give 100%, and it's going to give me back 100%. And I tell you what, that's how I was able to make it. That's why I'm still in my right mind. That's why, I'm just blessed, to be involved in boxing and train other kids and to let them know that they have to respect the sport.
Absolutely. At this point, you're the new WBA world champion. You have 2 non-title fights after winning the belt. Both fights you win by knockout in the first round. Now comes your first defense of your title. You face the former IBF light middleweight world champion, Buster Drayton. Another good fight was expected here. And boy, oh boy, did it live up to expectations. A real slugfest, which ended with a TKO victory for yourself in round 3. Julian, talk us through that fight, please.
Wow, what a tough fighter Buster Drayton was. A warrior. He is an epitome of a warrior. War is written all over him, and had the opportunity. But the thing is, I will never forget this. In every, battle, in every fight that I went to, there's always something that I pull out of it that I remember. With all my fight, even win or lose, I remember certain things in a particular fight. And I remember Buster Drayton. He was so talkative. Every time we would get close together, he would begin to run his mouth and he would begin to talk and try to, I guess he was trying to see if he could have beat me, in the verbal arena. And but I realized that it was a tactic, an old tactic that he was using, but it showed me that there was something that he was afraid of. I realized that there was something that was causing him to act the way he was acting. And all I did was stay quiet throughout the whole time that in the interview, when we had the press conference, all I said is that I'm going to speak with my fists. I'm going to speak with my punches. And went in there, and Buster Drayton was a very nice guy, man. I love that kid. And when I entered that ring, I realized that, Buster Drayton, I think, was in a place where he wanted to make a comeback. He wanted to display his talent, his warrior ability, but he was barking up the wrong tree. He was climbing the wrong tree. And, it was just amazing, man. And we started boxing, and I think I was a little too much quick. I was much stronger than he was. Even though he was strong, I was much stronger, quicker than he was, and I used that really, as a disadvantage, and I was able to, win the fight in a marvelous way. I knew when I hit him, when I caught him the right hand, okay, I knew that he was out before he even fell, before anybody knew anything. I felt a shock run from the top of my fist all the way to my elbow, and I did not have to touch him again. All I did was point to the floor, and he fell right back again, like a tree. He fell like a tree that was sawed in the forest.
A great win there. The next win for you, you move on to your second defence of the title,
Yes.
this time against Francisco de Jesus. It seemed like you took your time to get rid of him in this fight.
Yes. I think there was a lot of talk that, I was rushing. I needed to do a little more control of my boxing skills. I just decided I'm going to go out there and I'm going to take my time and I'm going to box and I'm going to take my time and just, use, I believe what I'm gifted with, and that's my power, and that's my ability to counter punch. In a sense, a lot of people don't look at me as a counter puncher, but I was a counter puncher, okay? And it was very sneaky. My left hand was, a lot of people would always look for my left hand, which is the left hook, but my right hand also had power. I used to set a lot of guys up with that because they're looking for the left hook, some looking for the right hand, and they're going to get the look. Those who are looking for the left hook will get the right hand. Those who are looking for the right hand will get the left hook.
Just
and
like
that's how
that.
it was. Yes.
Now, after that fight, you have a non-title fight in which you win it via knockout in the 8th round. Now we're moving on to July 30th, 1989, your third defence of your WBA world title, a young, fresh 22-year-old Terry Norris, the same Terry Norris that went on to become a 3-time world champion. Norris went into your bout with 2 losses on his record, 1 loss in a very close unanimous decision, 1 lost by disqualification. So he'd never been legitimately stopped. Julian, tell us what happened in this fight.
Wow, Terry Norris was an upcoming fighter that everybody, I think, felt, had the edge on me because of his boxing style. He was a boxer. I was considered a boxer puncher, more puncher, and they felt that the boxer would have definitely taken over with his skills, with his movement, his speed. He had some very quick hands, and a lot of people felt that this fight was a fight that would have definitely make me or break me.
Yeah,
and,
it was a banana skin. It was a banana skin.
Definitely was a banana skin. And again, I went in there with a mindset, that this kid is going to box. And I know that I'm going to have to take it to him. I can't allow him to get relaxed and get into his thing. I have to push the pace. I have to push everything. I have to be the one to initiate everything. And my corner, had a good plan, and we went out there, and they told me, don't ever step backwards, always keep going forward. And it turned out to be exactly what, we expected, and the opportunity came. He was boxing, and believe me, he had me. At times, his hand speed was sort of throwing me off at times. And a lot of people was able to see it. I felt that I lost the first round, and I came out in the second round. I went into the second round to literally go in there and just throw my hands and to make sure that I'm always the one throwing the last punch. And the second round was a good round. I felt that I had it, and it was a close fight. And here it is, Terry Norris came out on his toes. And again, I'm pursuing him and I'm backing him up. And the opportunity came where he dropped his hand. And because we decided that we're going to keep the pressure on him, I saw the opportunity. Okay? He was looking for the right hand, yet came back with a right hand, bam, while he was going down. He was literally out from that one punch.
Again, you win that fight by TKO in round 2. Then
Yes.
you decide to move up in weight. You decide to vacate the light middleweight title. You have 2 non-title fights to get you settled into the weight. You win both of those fights by knockout within 4 rounds. Now you're fighting for the vacant WBC middleweight world title against a man from my side of the water, Herol Graham. Okay?
Whoa.
Firstly, the fight was supposed to happen in the UK. What were the reasons it ended up
Right.
happening in Spain? I'm not too sure why it ended up in Spain. What was the reasons behind that?
Okay, one of the reasons why it ended up in Spain is because my detached retina. Okay, I had a detached retina, and the British board didn't allow me to fight on that card because of that. So that's why Danting decided to take it to Spain. So
Okay.
I think that was one of the reasons why it didn't happen in your hometown.
Okay, so we'll go on to the fight itself, which I really hate remembering, to be honest. So
Look,
go on.
I will never forget that fight. That was an epic fight. It was a fight, man. A little similar, I would say, to the Terry Norris fight, because Herol Graham was a tremendous athlete. Even though I didn't know much about him, I knew more about Terry Norris than I knew about Herol Graham. And Herol Graham, when I saw him for the very first time, I looked at his legs, his thighs. His thighs alone, I mean, were so muscular, so huge. I was like, what? When I looked at him in the ring, when I was in the ring, first time I've ever really seen him like that. And yes, weigh in is one thing, but in the ring, it was something else. And I realized that I was in for a fight of my life, moving up in weight in the middleweight division. And one of the reasons why, first of all, let me say this, one of the reasons why I left the junior middleweight is because there was nobody else really to fight me. I was calling out everybody, but nobody wanted to fight me. And Danting mentioned that the only way for me to make some money is to move up in weight. And, I think my power was able to, keep me in the middleweight division. And when I moved up, Herol Graham was my first fight. And I tell you what, we went in there just having, this almost like, I felt that there was something different about this fight. And I would have to dig deeper than I've ever dig before. He was a southpaw. He was unorthodox. He was very difficult. His style threw me off. I mean, he was the most difficult fight I've ever faced. And going into the fight, he caught me a punch in the first round that actually caused my eye to swell. Okay, my right eye. The referee was Joe Cortez. And after the first round, Joe Cortez came to the corner. He said, I'm looking at your eye. You got to do something. I might have to stop the fight. I went out in the second round and I started to move and box and, try to stay away. And I got caught in the eye again. And I went into the corner and I blew my nose. And when I blew my nose, my eye actually swelled bigger. My eye became much bigger. And my corner said, no, don't blow your nose. Don't blow it. It was too late. And my eye, I could have hardly seen out of the eye. So I decided that I was going to switch to southpaw because I couldn't see, with my eye. So I switched. And I was able to see better with on the southpaw side. Believe it or not, I'm going to say this to you. I don't know if your audience or anyone else will be listening, but I just want to say this. In the corner, I got off my seat. I'm looking over at Herol Graham. Believe it or not, being the man of God that I am, the first thing that I said, this was in the heat of battle. And you know what? I was being beat. I'll be honest with you, okay? He was getting the better of me. But I said this, God, send the Holy Spirit now. That's all I said. That's all I said. And then the bell rang. And I went out as a southpaw, and he came straight at me to finish me because of my eye. Couldn't really see. But when I switched, I saw him, and it was a right hook that I caught him. I threw a right. He was right there for it, and I just threw that right hook, and I caught him flush on the chin, and it was over.
Yeah, that was all she wrote.
I realized that, oh man, I realized that, that, hey, there is a God in heaven. And there is a God in heaven, and he has gifted me. He gifted me with the power, with the ability to punch. And you know what? We became very good friends. I admire that gentleman. I admire Herol Graham, and after the fight, I'm glad that everything was okay with him, and I mean, it's amazing as a, world champion. You go and you meet guys all over the world, but there's one thing, you go there to try to take each other's heads off, but after the fight, it's amazing how much sportsmanship, how much the joy, the love, you just want to go and just want to hug that brother for giving you a bump eye or maybe just, breaking a rib. You just want to give him a hug, And it's just amazing how we athletes, operate, especially after an epic fight, after a toe-to-toe, and and you're going at it, and like two wild dogs, and after that fight, the only thing you want to do is to go over to your opponent and just thank him and just hug him, and it's amazing, and it's just amazing, and again, I will never ever feel that I need to rewrite my career. There's only one thing in my career that I feel I would do different. I would definitely have a different promoter. That's my only
Because I was going to ask you afterwards, like after we got done with your career, if you had any regrets. I'm going to ask you that in a moment. I just want to go back to that Herol Graham fight. Now, Herol Graham, as you said, you be honest, he was winning that fight. You landed that punch on him, which was a devastating punch. He was out for about 5 minutes after that. A real brutal knockout. Would you say that was the best punch you ever landed in your career, Julian?
Wow. I tell you what, it was one of the most punches, especially coming from after that, the left-hand side, not being too much of a switcher, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It just happened that I switched, and I made that decision without my corner. I made that decision right before I went in, to the third round. And I switched, and he came right at me, and his chin was right there, and I just threw the punch, and it was perfect. I used my whole body. I mean, when I threw that left hook, I used every ounce of my body weight behind that punch, and I was able to deliver a punch. And that's one of the secrets that I have. That's one of the secrets that I believe makes a real dangerous puncher. Once you could use your body, once you could punch, with every ounce of your body weight and use it correctly, you'll be amazed. And that's something that, I think I was born with the ability to punch, but yet I had to bring it under, I had to be able to nurture it. I had to be able to harness it and to use it properly.
Yeah, no, but you got so many knockouts to choose from, to be honest. So to just say that was the best punch you landed, there's so many to think of, but it was definitely one of the best you landed, though.
Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, carrying on the journey, after capturing the WBC World Middleweight title, you go on to defend it 3 times in the space of 7 months. All 3 defences ending in knockout, 2 of them in the first round. Now comes your 4th defence. You take on Thomas Tate. His record at the time was 24-1. The first time in 10 years that one of your fights went the distance. I know you scored a knockdown during the fight, but you was unable to put him away. Walk us through that fight, Julian, a fight that was harder than most people thought it would be.
Yes, he was a fighter that I thought, I believe, studied me the whole lot throughout my career. His trainers, as a matter of fact, I worked with his trainers in camp. I fought a young man in Mexico. I don't know if you remember that fight. He was a southpaw as well. I fought him on the card with Chavez in Mexico.
Okay.
It was, and this kid, his coaches was actually the same coaches that trained Thomas Tate. Okay, and they were studying me. They wanted to beat me so bad. It was just amazing, and they were, to tell the truth, they were sort of a little angry with me because I beat most of their fighters. Somehow, I would fight a lot of their athletes. Somehow, they were very good trainers and they had very good athletes, and they promised that they would beat me, and they felt that Thomas Tate was the man to beat me. And being the talent that he was a tremendous fighter. I had the opportunity, again, to show my boxing skill. And I wanted to box. I wanted to go out there because Thomas Tate was a very good boxer as well. And I went out there and I boxed. I didn't want to really have an early knockout. I wanted to really box. And I think that's one of the reasons why he lasted. We wanted to show our skills. We wanted to show our talent. That I'm not just only a puncher, but I'm also a boxer. And then, I tell you what, when I look back at that fight, I realized that I had boxing ability. I guess maybe Herol Graham, I guess Terry Norris, and all those guys literally allowed me or pushed me to really get to that level where I was able to box Thomas Tate. It was amazing. I literally felt in control of that fight. Even though rounds were very close, I knew I was ahead. I knew that I was in control. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted to do, and I did it. And no matter what he came with, I always had something to answer back with. And that fight was one of my best, I believe, boxing ability, showing my boxing ability, showing my talent. And I really enjoyed fighting Thomas Tate. I remember knocking him down. And I remember the referee at that time was a brother from Las Vegas. And I remember him I heard him say to Tate, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. I literally heard this referee telling my opponent, keep your hands up, because I know, because he was from Las Vegas, I felt that he was more favored for Thomas Tate. Anyhow, I was able to win that fight, and I knew I was in control, and it was a heck of a fight.
Yeah, for sure. It really was. The fight I think you were talking about back in Mexico, was that the one where you took on Ron Collins?
Ron Collins. That's the fight.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
He was the same, his coaches was the same guys that worked with Thomas Tate.
Thomas Tate, yeah, okay. Right,
yes,
I got it.
I'll never forget it, yes.
They told him the secrets.
Yes. Because they was in camp, they saw me, they knew a lot about me, they knew, and they felt that they had my skills down, my they had my tricks and all of that down, and they would have been able to counter me and beat me, but it's a whole different story when you get in there. It's a whole different story because it's only you and your opponent, and the coaches are not in there, and it's a big difference if you don't think, and if you get hit, and especially if you're in with somebody that has the ability to knock you out with one punch. There's a lot of things that go through your head when you get hit.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Would you say, because we've gone over, you knocked out so many people, right? And when we go over these fights where they've gone the distance, do you feel that, because a lot of fighters these days say, when they go the distance and people get frustrated, they get disappointed when people go the distance. And then the fighters turn around and go, well, I learned a lot in that fight. I wanted to get the rounds in.
Right.
Do you think, in your case, do you think you really did learn more from all those fights that went the distance rather than the quick knockouts?
Yes, I must say, because there are areas in your career, there are areas in your talent that you want to test, you want to see if you are able to use your legs or your ability of moving and the timing and, and by knocking guys out early, you don't have the opportunity to do that. But yet, somehow, when you knock guys out, it tends to give you the desire to even train even harder, much more. It gives you that drive to go in the ring and to train even more and to box and to, even though I was knocking guys out in the third round, mostly the third round, my trainer always used to tell me, Julian, now you have to learn to box. Now you have to learn to counterpunch because most guys are going to come at you expecting that all you're going to do is throw hard punches. But if you box and if you counterpunch, they're going to be caught by surprise with that same power that you have. And that's something that I think made a difference. A lot of fighters come in expecting me just to be a slugger, just to be throwing punches. But when they stand in front of me, they realize this kid is more than what, they expected. And that's how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving on from that Thomas Tate fight, that would be your last successful defence during that title reign. You had one non-title bout, which you won by knockout in the fourth round over Eddie Hall. Then you put your WBC middleweight world title on the line against Gerald McClellan, a fight that you were winning until you got stopped in round 5. Now, what do you remember? What do you remember from that fight, Julian? Because I know that was a fight that, again, another fight of the many other fights that you will really, truly never forget.
He was one of the biggest fighters that I've met. He was strong, and coming into the fight, we heard a lot about him, and he was a puncher as well. And it was saying whoever gets hit first is going to get knocked out, whoever gets hit first. In my mindset, as being the champion, I know he's the one who's going to get hit. He's the one that is going to get the first punch that I'm going to be able to knock him out. And I went into that fight, and I knew that I was going to win this fight as well. And, started boxing, and I was doing pretty well. I knew I was in control. I had him. A lot of things happened before that fight. And, I'm not a man to make excuses, but I had an injury, in that particular fight. And, I really believe that if I was 100%, it would have been different. And the funniest thing, those two fights that I had with McClellan, I was injured twice. And I shouldn't have taken the fight, but I still, with my warrior instinct, I still went ahead and took the fight and lost. And it affected me. But yet, being the man of God that I am, being the person that I am, I took the loss, and it was something because of what I believe I went through with Mike McCollum. I was able to deal with my losses. I felt that my losses really, sort of like was something there to open up my eyes, showed me a lot of the mistakes, things that I was doing was wrong. And that fight with McClellan, for surely did. And I would remember in the dressing room after the fight, McClellan was in trouble. He went to the doctor. He decided that he had to go to the doctor because his head, something was wrong with his head. He was getting these headaches. And it's like he came over to me. He says, man, Julian, I've never gotten hit so hard in my life. I've never got hit so hard. I said, man, you didn't get hard. You hit me hard. You're the one that knocked me out. He said, yeah, but I don't know what kept me up. He says, my legs. He was trying for his legs. And as a matter of fact, my corner told me it looked like they're going to stop the fight. It looked like he wants to quit. I'll never forget the first fight. It looks like McClellan wanted to quit. But, oh, man, I can't remember the coach, man. He's a very famous person.
Yeah, Emmanuel Stewart.
I'll never forget Emmanuel Stewart. Emmanuel Stewart pushed him and said, come on, Chap, you got to step up. You got to step up, man. You got to step up. You're a champion. You got to, man, and, I said to myself, if Emmanuel didn't do that, he probably would not have come out in that particular round that he was I was hitting him body shots. I was whipping to the body. I'll never forget. And but yet he persevered, and I got knocked out, man. And boy, I tell you what, I respected his power as well. He can hit pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that was.
It's really strange because, you, as you mentioned there, you had 2 fights. We're going to get onto the second fight in a moment. I'm gonna just run through what you did after that. So of course you bounced back after that with 3 wins, 2 by knockout in the first round, 1 by unanimous decision, before stepping back in the ring in a rematch with Herol McClellan. Now it's weird because you had 2 fights, and out of the 2 fights, put the knockouts aside, okay? He won the first fight and the second fight by stoppages. You actually won more of the rounds. If you put all the rounds in one fight, you won more of the rounds, which is just bizarre, really.
Right.
But unfortunately, he won the rounds that counted in the end, you know?
But believe it or not, my training camp was in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And I was working closely with a doctor, and he said to me, Julian, I want you to really seriously think about this. You need to pull out of this fight, because I had a disc in my back, that was oh man, it was out of place. It was strained. And I told him, no, man, I got to fight, and I went into that fight, and the punch hurt me, but the pain in my back really did me in, and I tipped my hat to him again, and I said, man, you beat me, But I didn't give up. I did not give up.
No, of course.
I won the title for the 3rd time. I won a title for the 3rd time. Did you realize that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I know everything. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. I know you're a boxing fanatic, man. I listened to you, but I heard you say 2-time world champion.
No. 2-weight world champion. 2-weight world champion.
2 world. That's right. Okay. That's my fault.
This is my show.
Yes, I got you.
The second fight with Herol McClellan, it only lasted around about 70 seconds, something like that. It was a really short fight.
Yeah,
as you
man,
said there, it was, you gone into that fight with a slip disc. It was a decision that you made to continue to fight, which was really done with your heart rather than your head, to be honest.
Exactly.
Which is what a lot of fighters do. There's not really much to talk about in that fight, as I say.
Yeah, back in those times. It was a decision that I made. My corner sort of tried to get me to, really make the right decision, but they want to respect my decision as well. And I realized that, hey, I'll be honest with you, financially, I needed the fight, to tell you the truth. Financially back then, I needed the fight. I needed to get, the fight to keep things in place for me, for my family and stuff like that. So,
of course.
That was things that you just had to, you had to swallow and deal with, and that's why I believe, I had to go through that thing so I could try and teach my sons,
Of course. Now, at this point...
And direct them differently. Yes, go ahead.
Now, within a year of that second, that second McClellan fight, you come back with a knockout win in a non-title fight, and then you fight for the vacant WBC World Middleweight title, your old belt, the one that McClellan had vacated. You faced Augustino Cardamone. He was undefeated as he stepped into the ring, but he left with his first career loss, which was by knockout in round 2. Now, at this point, you're a 3-time world champion, 2-weight and 3-time, and you've beat some great fighters along the way. Does any of your hunger or desire leave you at all at this point, honestly?
At that point?
Yeah, at that point.
I tell you what, I think some of the drive had left when I lost, but when I won, when I beat Cremona, it revived me a bit. I tell you what, it did revive me. I must say, I'm a very positive person. I believe in addition, multiplication, but not subtraction. I don't believe in subtraction. I believe in addition. And I'm a very positive person, and like I told you, whenever I decide to do something, I'm going to give it 100%. Even at that time, I was still hungry. I was still, desiring to become a world champion. And when I got the opportunity to fight against Carmona, it was an opportunity, and I took it. And even knowing his record, knowing the type of fighter he was, I think I felt that he had never faced somebody like me. I realized that he had a lot of thoughts going through, because he knew the type of fighter that I was. There was still a lot of respect, and I used that for my advantage, and it worked out just right. And I saw a little intimidation just by staring him, just by looking deep down inside his soul. And that's something that I have learned when I go into the ring, and we have to we do the face off, and we stare each other, and we look to see what we can find that we can exploit, that we can affect, and I saw something, and I grabbed it, I don't know if he saw something in mine, but I saw something in his, and I grabbed it, and I realized that there was some fear there, and I realized that if I carry the fight, if I make the fight, I am going to get the best of it, and I did it, and it worked out just right, and I realized, that his heart wasn't really where it was supposed to be, and I was able to become a 3-time world champion, or twice WBC champion.
Of course. Now, after this fight, as I say, you go in there with Quincy Taylor. Now, this was a good fighter. These fights here, the next fights that follow this, I say this was kind of when you were past your best, if that's fair to say so, Julian. You got in there with Quincy Taylor, and of course you got stopped in round 6. It was a close fight up until that point. Could you go over the Quincy Taylor fight? What you can remember from that fight for us?
Yes, I knew I was having some problems with my. It was actually my left hand.
Yeah.
I was having problems with my left shoulder. Really didn't know what. I thought it was a muscle. I didn't realize that it was a rotator cuff. And I remember in the fight, we was going at it, man, and I threw a left hook. I probably missed him or caught him, but my hand felt numb, and it come as if it was dead. And I couldn't move it. And then we went to the hospital after the fight, after I lost and all of that, I beat up. I went to the hospital, and they said your rotator cuff is torn completely. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, these days here, you'd done a lot in the sport already, to be honest. These were like your last days in the sport, you'd done a lot up at this point. This point was when you were over the hill. You were on the decline a little bit.
Yeah, I was over the hill, yes.
Yeah, if that's fair. But after that
problem,
fight...
Listen, I'm not, believe me, I can take positive criticism. Anything anybody wants to talk to me, no matter what it sounds like, even if it's me losing and I getting beat up, and I can deal with it. Believe me.
That didn't happen much, Julian.
I just want you to know that. And be real. Just be real. I would rather somebody be real and let me know.
Of course.
Let's talk about it.
Of course. Now, after that Quincy Taylor fight, you bounced back with 4 wins. 2 by knockout, 2 on points.
Wow.
Before losing to Verno Phillips, a former and future world champion, and then, of course, finally to 3-time world title challenger Anthony Jones. Your illustrious career ends on a record of 55 wins, 49 by KO. That is so incredible. And just 6 losses. So your final record ended up with 55 wins out of 61 fights and 6 losses. So I want to ask you, Julian, now. You talked about it earlier on. You said about the Don King situation. I want to ask you, were there any regrets in your career?
Okay, let me say this way. The only regret I have is my promoter. The reason why is because now I can look back, especially after what I've been through, with that promotion, the battles that I went through, with the promotion that's supposed to be on my side and working for me and helping me and trying to get me my best opportunities, to make, the best of my career and to make as much money as I can make that I believe I deserve. I felt that they let me down. I would definitely would have dealt with either other promotion, somebody else other than Dan King. Okay? Now, I'm not going to be real. I'm just being real. And I would talk to Dan King and I'd tell him to his face, that I don't think that you gave me what, I deserve. And I was fighting for it. And you still took what belonged to me and really didn't care. And that's something that I would definitely change. And that's why none of my boys are with Dan King. That's why I'm doing my best to try and promote them myself and manage them myself. And we've been through some obstacles, and I feel that we've done a tremendous job, and I think they're happy. They feel content, and I believe the best is yet to come.
Yeah, for sure. So the only regret with your career you could really say was just promotionally. Is that correct, yeah?
Definitely. And even with Dan King, I'm still privileged to have worked with him. I became champion through him, in spite of all that may have happened. The man was one of the renowned promoters out there, and he did a good job, but yet there were things that he was doing that was not really beneficial for the fighters. And I'm a prime example, and many others that I know, that spoke to me and that, but yet I still respect the man. I would never disrespect him. I'm just speaking my mind, and that's what it's all about. And again, I really believe that, boxing has evolved, and if I could have promoted myself, just like how Mayweather promoted himself, I would have done that. You know what I'm saying? But again, it's just that the era that we're in, this is a different era, and we have different fighters, and boxing has evolved, and we have to flow with, what's going on. But yet, we still have to respect the sport. And people like you, I must say, have kept boxing alive. And I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share, from my heart and to the boxing world. And I really appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Hey, I really appreciate you. Now, I want to ask you about these days. Just before I ask you about that, Julian, when you say you had great times with Don King, but there's some things that he did which you don't think were, beneficial to you. Are you able to go in more detail on that?
Money-wise, I don't think we were paid. I don't think I was given the opportunity to make the money that I think I deserve, that I was worth. And Dan King didn't pay me that money. There was always an excuse, that Julian, you're from the Virgin Islands, and if you come to Las Vegas and you have a main event with Julian Jackson, how many Virgin Islands are going to be there? Is what he would try to bring to me, and that's what he says. If I have, what's his name, the Mexican that he had, Chavez, he says, if I put Chavez on a card, I'm going to fill the house with Chavez, with Mexicans. But I can't fill the house with Virgin Islands, people from the Virgin Islands. And I understand that, but it is your duty to make me a household name. It was your, as a promoter, it was your job, to give me that opportunity, to make me that type of fighter. And I believe that I was that type of fighter. But you did not give me, my due, and that's really what I have my beef with Dante.
Okay, that's fair enough. Lastly, Julian, the last couple of things I've got to ask you before I let you go. Of course, you were a very hard hitter yourself. You knocked a load of guys out. Who was the hardest hitter you've ever been in with?
Oh, boy. I would say Herol McLennan is one of the hardest hitters that I've been in with. And, it was proven. I got stopped. And I'm not, ashamed of that. But, there are a lot of other fighters that I've been in with. But Herol McLennan was one of the hardest. Everybody have their opinion, you know what I'm saying, in boxing, and have their favorites. But I think the world know that Herol McLennan was a very good puncher himself. And yeah. I must give him that, I must give him that due.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Okay, so the last couple of questions I've got now, probably the last one or two, Julian, is, of course, your two sons box as well, just like you did. They followed in your footsteps. I've got a close relationship with Julius, a real nice guy. John's a good guy too. Both of them have had a bit of a rough 12 months. How happy are you with their progress thus far? And also, what's next for both men, of course, having a bit of a rough 12 months?
Yeah, what is amazing is that, these guys, go through some serious, losses that could have an effect, to any athlete, after losing like that. And it's amazing. And I think what really is transpiring is that they have learned from my losses and how I dealt with my losses, and the effect it has on them is in a positive sense. And I am so pleased with what I am seeing. A lot of fighters will lose a fight and want to give up and want to quit and want to throw in the towel because, they feel that they've been dealt with unjustly. And, sometimes they feel that things are not going well anymore, and they just start to go downhill. But I always tell my boys that, look, your faith is what makes the difference, and your trust. And you know what I went through, what your dad went through, and, I've lost fights, and you know what? Losing is what really made me, okay? Your loss can either make you or break you, and according to how you deal with your losses, and I believe that they're dealing with it perfectly, and I think that they're definitely going to come back. Like I said, John fought Cuadras, and he was totally in control, knocked down Cuadras, had him hurt, knocked him down in I think, second round, and then was going in for the kill, and then all of a sudden, bang, he got caught cold, and lost the fight, and here it is now, he's fighting again. He was ranked number 2 after losing to Cuadras. I mean, that's
Andy Lee. Yeah.
I'm mixing myself up, but he lost to Andy Lee, and yet he was ranked number 2 in the world because of the way it was done, the way what happened. Everybody, even Andy Lee knew that was a shot that came from nowhere. That I mean, that it was a surprise. He knew he was going to lose. He knew he was on the losing end, and then all of a sudden, bang! He caught John, and then John is fighting now one of the Charlo brothers, and he is dominating the fight in total control, like easy fight. Our plan, our strategies were working to the T until he got caught again and lost the fight. I know it was hard, and and I realized that it was a tough thing. And then the next thing you know, Julius, same thing happened to Julius. He's fighting for opportunity to fight for a world title and lost against this guy, and then it affected him as well. But then again, I always tell them I was there. I thank God for the opportunity to be in their corners and to be able to speak into their lives, especially at those points, those pivotal points of their life when they go through stuff. Sometimes you need somebody that could speak into your life, somebody that can release something positive that could cause you to make a tremendous stand. And then he fought again and lost not too long ago. And again, was in control again, just like John was. And the thing is, he knows he could beat the guy, but got caught. And I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that these guys must understand that greatness is how you deal with your losses. And I tell you what, I am proud of the way they're dealing with it. The boxing world have not yet heard what is about to take place. And I give God the glory for what he's doing. And I really believe this. Their careers they are not over. They're going to become world champions. They got to continue to trust God and believe God and stick with it. They got to believe in themselves as well, and they got to work hard. There are a lot of things that came out, because of those losses, a lot of things that they themselves, had to go deep and really research and find what there could be mental situations that takes place in a lot of fighters. A lot of fighters have mental problems that they need to overcome, and those are things that we all are dealing with, and I believe that you're going to see and you're going to be hearing a lot more about these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Now, the last question I've really got for you, Julian, the absolute last question now is, I have to ask this question to all fighters that I speak to from all over the world. I want to ask you, who would you say is your favourite fighter from the UK in history, past or present, UK fighter?
To tell you the truth, I really didn't know much about Graham. I knew more about, I heard more about Eubanks. Yeah, the heavyweight was
Lennox Lewis
from Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis was one of my favorite. Really, I must say that Lennox Lewis. He was the one that I knew of more than any other fighter. I haven't seen Eubanks. I heard about Eubanks, but I had the opportunity to even get to meet Lennox Lewis. Many fights with Dan King, being that Dan King was my promoter. And I know Lennox Lewis had a lot of different, I think fights with his fighters, and I was able to know him a little more. And I think he would be, considered one of my favorite out of the UK.
Yeah, it's a popular answer. A lot of people go with Lennox Lewis, a truly good fighter. Now, Julian, listen, I just want to say I've really, really enjoyed every second of this interview. I really appreciate you giving me a bit of time this week. Happy birthday for a couple of days ago. And no doubt we'll speak again soon, my friend. No doubt we'll speak again soon.
All right, man. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the preview part of the show where we preview the fights that are coming up this week and this weekend. There's a few fights that are taking place during the week. Now, of course, this podcast is going out on a Thursday, so I'm going to refer to it as tonight. So tonight on the Thursday, the 15th of September, over in Philadelphia, USA. Top of the bill, we had him on our show before. Nice kid, Dusty Hernandez Harrison, 29-0 with the 1 draw. He's taking on Thomas Lamanna, who has a record of 21 wins and 1 loss. I believe that Lamanna's mixed it at a bit of a better level than Dusty Hernandez Harrison. And Dusty Hernandez Harrison's last win over Mike Dallas Jr. was a little bit controversial. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a 10-rounder at welterweight. It's for the vacant USBA welterweight title. And I believe that Hernandez Harrison's actually the underdog here. So best of luck to him tonight. We really are pulling for him to get the job done. Also on that bill, I've mentioned him a number of times now. He's a bit of a superstar. Well, he will be a bit of a superstar in the future. 17-year-old Devin Haney. He looks to move to 10-0. It'd be fantastic for him to cruise to double-figure wins with a 6-round contest here at the lightweight division against Mike Fowler. Now, not too sure who Mike Fowler is, but he's really got his work cut out. Devin Haney, tremendous young talent. But that's really it for the Thursday. We're now going to move over to the Friday. We're going to talk about one fight that's happening over in Denmark. Lalenga Mock, he's taking on Derek Finley. Now, Lalenga Mock now with a record of 35 wins and 14 losses with the 1 draw. He just gets a mention because once upon a time he knocked down David Haye. He's in a 10-rounder at super middleweight, and Derek Finley's record 24 wins and 20 losses with the 1 draw. That's it for Denmark. We're now going to go over to Japan. Two world titles contested on this bill. We're going to start with the first one. Shinsuke Yamanaka, 25-0 with the 2 draws. He puts his WBC World Bantamweight crown on the line against Anselmo Moreno, who has a record of 36 wins, 4 losses and 1 draw. Also on that bill, Hugo Ruiz, 36 wins and 3 losses. He puts his WBC World Super Bantamweight title on the line against Hozumi Hasegawa, who has a record of 35 wins and 5 losses. So a good card there over in Japan. Some great cards happening over in Japan in recent history, to be honest. But that's really it for Asia. We're now going to come over to the USA at the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. Top of the bill, Ishe Smith, 28 wins and 8 losses. He takes on Frank Galaza, 17 wins and 1 loss with the 2 draws. That should be a good fight. You know, Ishe Smith, he done really, really well to capture a world title, but you know, he's in there against a guy here who's mixed it at a decent level. I think this is actually going to end up being a good fight. Also on that bill, Dominique Dalton, 17-0 with the 1 draw. He takes on Justin Deloach, who has a record of 15 wins and 1 draw. Another good fight here. Both of those fights mentioned at Super Welterweight 154. And also on this card, Jay-Leon Love, 22-1. He takes on Deshaun Johnson. We've talked about this fight with Jay-Leon Love when he was on the show a few weeks back. So I know that he's thinking he's going to just go in there and get the job done. He probably will, but all the best to Jay-Leon Love from the BoxHard Podcast. Also on this bill, Sharif Boguer, he looks to move to 29-1. He takes on Luis Eduardo Flores. Now, Boguer's a good fighter. And also on this bill, Lanel Bellows, 16-1. He takes on DiCarlo Perez, who has a record of 15-5. So this one's a bit of it's got a lot of Mayweather's fighters on it. So I believe it's probably a Mayweather promotion card. So it's great to see his young talent get out. But that's it for Las Vegas. We're now going to come back to Europe. We're going to start with a card over in Germany. This is a fight that should be quite a good one. Both guys got 37 wins. It's, of course, top of the bill. Nuri Safari takes on Firat Arslan. Now, we know Arslan for his fights against Marco Huck and the rest. This is for the vacant WBO European Cruiserweight title. So Safari has a record of 37 wins and 7 losses. Arslan has a record of 37 wins and 8 losses with the 2 draws. Also on this bill, Karo Murat, former opponent of Nathan Cleverly, former opponent of Bernard Hopkins as well. He's fighting for the vacant WBA International Light Heavyweight title against Yevgeny Maktenko. Now, Maktenko has a record of 8 wins and 4 losses. I really don't understand why these two men are being matched when one is so much more experienced than the other, and it's actually for a title here. So that's a win that Karo Murat should really win relatively easily. I'm not sure what that matchmaking is all about there, but nonetheless, it's another fight that I should mention. Also on that bill, Manuel Charr. Nobody kind of knows what's happened to him. I know that at one point he took a loss and somebody abused him on Facebook, and he was trying to, I believe, meet up for a fight with someone, and I think someone ended up shooting him or something like that. I heard something that could be completely wrong, but I did hear something along those lines. Manuel Charr, 29-4. He takes on Sefer Seferi. Now, I'm not sure if this is anything of any kind of relation to the top of the bill fight with Nuri Safari fighting Firat Arslan. But this guy has a record of 21-0. So even though Manuel Charr is the home fighter, so to speak, I think that this is going to be a tough ask. Manuel Charr, a lot of people thought he was better than what he was. He's took a couple of losses that he shouldn't have lost. And it's going to be an interesting one. As I say, 29-4 Manuel Charr against Sefer Seferi, I should say, 21-0. That's also for the vacant WBA International Heavyweight title. And also on this bill, a bit of a strange one, Odlania Solis, 21-3. Another fighter who was, expected to do big things, took on Vitaly Klitschko. I believe he got knocked out in the first round. He got his world title shot. He dropped back down. He took a loss to someone, I can't remember who it was. And then he ended up losing to really old Tony Thompson, which was a bit of a shock loss. But he's back again. I believe he's someone that really hasn't dedicated himself to boxing as much as he should have. And he has a record of 21-3. It's an 8-rounder against an opponent called Alexander Todorovic. Now, Todorovic has a record of 8 wins and 9 losses with the 1 draw. So this should be a really, really easy win here for Solis. And hopefully next week I'll be saying that he scored a knockout, because if he underperforms here, then I think that's really it. You know, he really should win this fight easy. 2 huge mismatches on this, Bill, in terms of records anyway. But that's it for Germany. We're now going to go over to Poland, a cracking card that Sky Sports have picked up just last minute. I'm going to start with a fight on the undercard. Andrzej Warzik, 32-1. He takes on Albert Sosnowski. 49 wins, 7 losses and 2 draws. Now, Sosnowski, of course, a Polishman who lives in Redhill in England, which is a real strange one. We know that I believe he's been in Prize Fighter. At one point, I think people were talking about possibly being a Joshua opponent. He's got a whopping record of 49 wins. Again, a real padded record, but he takes on Warzik, who has a record of 32 wins and 1 loss. It's going to be a good fight, this one. Both guys, I think they both want to go on to big things, but only one of them is going to make it. And Sosnowski, I don't even know how old he is, but he's had so many fights now. I couldn't even believe he was still boxing, to be honest. I think he's been inactive for a few years as well, if I'm not mistaken. He certainly hasn't been in any big fights. That one is going to be a good fight. And also on the bill, being the main event, Krzysztof Golovkin, 26-0. He takes on Alexander Usyk, 9-0. A lot of people know about Usyk, a tremendous talent. He's only turned pro, I believe, maybe a year or two ago. He's, of course, a former gold medalist in the Olympics, and this is going to be a real good fight. It's for the WBO World Cruiserweight title, one I'm certainly going to be tuned into. Again, remember, it's on Sky Sports 1 on Saturday, so it's going to be a real good fight. But that's it for Poland. We're now going to go over to the USA, another fight happening over there on the Saturday. Now, I've got to actually include this fight. Again, it's a fighter who he's not regarded as a good fighter anymore. We've seen Dillian White just take him apart, and he was a former world title challenger. But the reason why I'm going to mention him is because he's actually announced his retirement after this fight. So this is his last fight. So Brian Minto, 41 wins and 11 losses. He takes on Guila Bozay, who has a record of 15 wins, 8 losses and 4 draws. So I'm hoping Brian Minto can go out with a win here. He's he's really completely over the hill now, and I hope he doesn't actually lose, because he may carry on, and I really think he should hang him up. But that's it for that fight. That's taking place over in Pennsylvania. Now it's time for the big one. We're going over to the AT&T Stadium, of course, the home of the Dallas Cowboys, over in Texas, USA. Top of the bill, Saul Canelo Alvarez, 47 wins, 1 loss and 1 draw. This is actually the BoxHard Podcast 50th episode, and this is Saul Canelo Alvarez 50th professional fight. Liam Smith, our very own Liam Smith, in the other corner with a record of 23 wins, 0 losses and 1 draw. Also, Liam Smith bringing his WBO World Super Welterweight, also known as light middleweight, world title to this fight. So Canelo, of course, the huge favourite. Everybody knows that Liam Smith is up against it here. I think Liam Smith's the type of fighter that doesn't really let the occasion get to him. I don't think he's going to be, he's going to freeze or anything. There's going to be loads and loads and loads of people in attendance. It's a stadium fight over in the US. And of course, a lot of people coming out for Canelo. It's on the Mexican celebration weekend as well. So there's going to be loads and loads of Mexicans in the house. I don't think Liam Smith's worried about that, but it's of course an uphill task. Everybody knows it. Even Callum Smith last week said he knows that his brother's up against it, but he feels that he's got his number. And a lot of people should remember that when Amir Khan was training to fight Canelo, Liam Smith was actually sparring with Amir Khan, replicating Canelo's style. So I know that Liam Smith knows a little something about Canelo, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. But it's going to be a really, really good fight, and I pray to God that Liam Smith can get the job done, because it will be so brilliant for his career and also brilliant for Great British boxing, to be honest. Again, we're on a huge high right now. It's really, really booming, as everybody knows. I really, really hope that Beefy can go and get the job done. So all the best to him. Also on that bill, Gabriel Rosado, 23-9. He takes on Willie Monroe Jr., 20 wins and 2 losses. This is actually going to be a good fight, but one I think Willie Monroe Jr. should win. Of course, both opponents, both victims in the past of Gennady Golovkin. He stopped them both. And this is for the vacant WBO Intercontinental Middleweight title. Also on the bill, young prospect, again, another man that we've mentioned many, many times, 21-0. Joseph Diaz, he takes on Andrew Cancino. This is for the NABF featherweight title. Also on the bill, Diego De La Hoya, 15-0, the cousin of Oscar De La Hoya. He puts his WBC Youth World Super Bantamweight title on the line against Luis Orlando Del Valle, who has a record of 22 wins and 2 losses. A good fight here for Diego De La Hoya, but one I'm sure he'll get through. Also on the bill, Eddie Gomez. He puts his IBF North American welterweight title on the line against Darlo Ferryman. Now, Ferryman has a record of 13 wins and 1 loss. Again, another good fight. Also on the bill, young prospect out of the Robert Garcia Boxing Academy, Joshua Franco, 6-0. He looks to move to 7-0. A good fighter, a good prospect. Believe me, keep your eyes on him. And also, we had him on our show previously a few weeks back, Hector Tanahara, 6-0, his record at the moment. Another product of the Robert Garcia Boxing Academy. It's great to see him back out again on a huge, huge bill. And also, another man we've had on our show before, this time from our shores, of course, from the UK, a good friend of mine, actually, Anthony Yard, 7-0. He looks to move to 8-0. It's only a 6-rounder at light heavyweight. His opponent yet to be announced, but along with Frank Warren, he of course brought Liam Beefy Smith in the main event. He's his fighter as well, and he brought one of his fighters along, and it turned out to be Anthony Yard. So it's brilliant for him to be able to go to America, showcase his talent over there. Again, I saw that they put him straight on some sort of telecast the other day. He was involved in like the grand arrivals. He came in, everybody's getting him to sign gloves, taking pictures, all these fans. He gets in the ring, does a bit of pad work with his trainer Tunde Ajayi, and then they put him on like a telecast with Douglas Fisher and a few other commentators in the US, and he introduced himself to the fans, and he looked like he was really enjoying it. A lot of people getting to know him over in the US so early on in his career, and I think his talent, he could really go in some big places. So all the best to Anthony Yard, and I think he's going to pick up another knockout. We know he likes to get them done early. That's it for that huge card over in the AT&T Stadium. We're now going to go over to Sunday now. It's the last fight to mention on the preview part of the show. This fight taking place on Sunday, the 18th of September, over in Belarus. Top of the bill, Sergei Kamitsky. A lot of people brand him as the Brit Basher. He's knocked out a few of our prospects over here, including Frank Buglioni. His record, 30 wins and 13 losses with 3 draws. He's in a 6-rounder at super middleweight against Serhii Krapshyla, who has a record of 4 wins, 14 losses and 2 draws. So Sergei Kamitsky should really get the job done there. But that's really it for the preview, and that's really it for the show. So it's now time to conclude episode 50 of the BoxHard Podcast. It's been 10 shows in a row now with world champions. I hope that you listened to the end. I'd like to thank, of course, the world champion that took part in this week's show, which was the 3-time 2-weight world champion, Julian The Hawk Jackson, an absolute incredible fighter. So I'd like to thank him very, very much for coming on this week's show. And also for the listeners that listen to this week's show every single week. It's a bit weird because usually we have the part 1 and then we bring on a guest, then part 2, then we bring on another guest, then I end it. But this time I've gone straight from the preview straight into the ending. So it all feels a bit weird to me. But I hope that you're going to come back next week and listen to next week's show. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. You've been excellent. Until next week, take care.